getting back to the just initial stage of the establishment of the Agricultural Alliance in Armenia, again, I would like to emphasize that by that time there was no any organization, international organization who work in this field in agricultural sector, who raised the importance of advocacy work in agriculture and food security issues. So, and realizing that we need the multi-stakeholder approach, we start thinking about establishment of such multi-stakeholder network and platform. That was Oxfam, which first emphasized the importance of joint advocacy, joint effort, joint resource, collaborative and coordinated approach in advocacy work. And after these few meetings, we start enlarging the membership of this preliminary established alliance. So all organizations specified the needs of and gaps in policy dialogue with the government, a lot of support to the smallholder farmers, because actually Armenia has no the smallholder farmer representatives like the union or federation, and all this organization having a lot of beneficial on grassroots level become like the front people who start speaking about the farmers' problem, who start raising the problems against the government. And the alliance representative from these well-known organizations, international, local organizations, scientific organizations, start lobbying and advocating for the smallholder farmers.
What we are usually doing, we are sharing our opinions, then coming to an opinion that is joint for the alliance on the issue, and then share this joint opinion or position with the, for example, Ministry of Agriculture as main governmental body who is involved in the development of strategies, implementing of the strategic programs of the government in agricultural sector. Key achievements, I can split it into two parts. First part is internal achievements, that these all members are joined for like at least for last 5-6 years. And from another hand, it is that officials take into account our opinion.
Oxfam supported to the establishment of Agricultural Alliance and further on to strengthen the alliance through different capacity building activities, providing the trainings, and recently also realizing the importance of further step after the closure of the project, which is mostly focused on the monitoring activities of the policy in agriculture and food security. We developed the specific monitoring log frame. By the way, those log frame was developed by the expert from the Agriculture Alliance, and those experts provided these trainings to Alliance and prepared them for the further very I think important activities with the Ministry of Agriculture, which is the public monitoring. Credibility and visibility of Alliance increased to some extent when the Ministry of Agriculture intended to sign the Memorandum of Understanding with the Alliance, which definitely opened more opportunities for collaborative work. And by the time the food security project started its implementation, and we had a chance to closely work with the Ministry of Agriculture on the development of the first draft of new food security and agricultural sustainable strategy. After the closure, the project will give a lot of project capital, knowledge, to hand over all this knowledge and capital to Alliance to ensure the sustainability further sustainability of the project and all we done within this project. And providing a lot of capacity to Alliance. Now Alliance is ready to continue all these efforts done within this advocacy work, particularly related to policy making process, improving agriculture and food security strategies.
food security is not the only role of only the government. There is a big role to be played by the civil society. So actually, in the democratic environment, the bottom-to-up approach should be maintained in order the government to see that whatever policy it implements, it actually reflects the needs and the requirements of the public, of the electorate, of the citizens. And in this particular regard, it is very important to mobilize the civil society, to mobilize the public effort, to mobilize the public voices as well as the expertise. And all these factors have created a very clear need of organizing the platform where the civil society can voice its concerns. And not only as an individual, but as to provide the joint effort to empower the initiatives of the different actors, as well as to provide the opportunity of the divergence of the positions, to unite the voices of different strata of the society. But that was the basic motivation behind creating GUARD. Well, currently GUARD unites 30 members. Predominantly, these are the non-governmental organizations, international and local. So the GUARD established twofold benefit. One is an opportunity for the civil society voice to be unified and empowered, and on the other side to provide the platform for the partnerships between the parties which were more or less competing to each other before. Oxfam's and its spin-off Bridges role is particularly important to, first, to facilitate the sustainability of the alliance on the one side, to provide a qualified and professional secretarial and coordinative service, and third, to contribute to the exposure of the alliance, as Oxfam and its spin-off organization Bridge brings about a certain reputation, which means kind of a center of excellence for coordinating civil society actors. The policy discourse on food security in this country has become on the top of the agenda, and GUARD's contribution here is immense.
ალიანსში ძირითადად გაერთიანებულია ის ორგანიზაციები, რომლებიც ასე თუ ისე დაკავშირებული არიან სასურსათო უსაფრთხოებისა და კვების უსაფრთხოების საკითხებთან. ამიტომ ჩვენი უშუალო მიზანი იყო ალიანსში აი ლობირების და ხელისუფლებაზე გავლენის გაძლიერება. აგრეთვე იყო ჯგუფი, რომელიც მუშაობდა სოფლის მეურნეობის სამინისტროს მიმართულებით სტრატეგიის დოკუმენტზე და რეკომენდაციების შესამუშავებლად საქართველოში სოფლის მეურნეობის განვითარებისა და სოფლის განვითარების სტრატეგიებთან დოკუმენტთან დაკავშირებით. ამ მუშაობის პერიოდში ძირითადი შედეგი იყო ის, რომ საბოლოო ჯამში ყველაფერმა ამან თავი მოიყარა პროექტში საქართველოს კანონისა სასურსათო უსაფრთხოების შესახებ, რომელიც ალიანსის სახელით წარდგენილი იქნა როგორც საკანონმდებლო ინიციატივა პარლამენტში.
Elkana is the member of GUARD since the beginning. Our main goal was to engage farmers in the policy-making process. And we have organized several meetings with them in the regions. We have organized farmers' congresses. We wanted to ensure direct access to the markets for the farmers. And thus we organized New Year's Farmers Food Fairs. And once we hosted the exhibition with the Colombian farmers, who shared their knowledge, their information about access to land, about self-organization, and about how to influence decision-making process. One of Elkana's other contributions is the membership in Committee of Food Security in Rome. The benefit to be member of civil society mechanism of Committee of Food Security is the gaining of international attention, international experience to share information and to bring international expertise to Georgia.
I do believe in the current stance of the alliance to maintain its prevalence on the arena of policy advocacy in rural development and agricultural development field, because the Guard is represented by the highly reputable organizations which are acting in the areas of the Guard's advocacy, policy advocacy fields. It convinces me that in the middle and the long term the alliance will have the life and will have the voice to say. Within the frame of this project, we have conducted specific researches to assess the access to finance of smallholders to the several state programs that are aiming at providing investment to their capital assets and their production. Still, the smallholder farmers have very limited access to the funding opportunities, either through the grant resources or through the banking sector. So these are following factors that are hindering the opportunities for the farmers to access this funding, the funding resources. Firstly, it is in relation to their lack of capacities and knowledge. And this knowledge is mainly in relation to the business planning. So they are not capable to plan their business. Another side is also in relation to their economic base, because they have a very limited opportunities to provide the collateral as a guarantee for the reimbursing of the loans that they are applying to. And thirdly, it is laying within the very nature of the agriculture, which is highly risky business. And the bank's position is normal. I mean, for the banks, this sector represents a very high risk. We have elaborated the recommendations. These recommendations are covering one major need that is in relation to the immense role of state in supporting the farmers to become creditworthy, to become competitive. And it is in relation to the opportunities for the farmers to gain an access mainly to the grant resources through the customized investment programs funded by the state budget. Another part of recommendations is about how to expand the knowledge of the farmers in order to gain the capacity to negotiate with the banks, to present their business, to convince the creditors, potential creditors, on the creditworthy of their business. Within the Guard Alliance, we have considered all these issues based on our evidence base, and we have come up to the joint declaration in support of the cooperative and smallholder farmers. And this declaration contains all the necessary policy orientation and implications for the government, but one core recommendation that we are sticking to and we are insisting on is that at least 20 million lari is needed annually to be allocated through the state budget for the purpose of capital investment for the cooperatives.
In accordance with the official statistics, we have more than 300,000 rural living households whose main economic activity is smallholder farming. Now, commercial sector, commercial banks and credit organizations are continuing to downscale to these smallholder farmers, and they are considered them as potential and existing clients. The loan products that are provided by the formal credit organizations are not fit very much to the needs of these farmers. Taking into account also the high level of risk in agriculture, this loan product is priced very high. So one of the main achievements of Agriculture Alliance is that with our efforts, the government includes calculation of effective interest rate into the law on agricultural lending. Requirement of the law on agricultural lending requires the banks to announce real effective interest rate, and so the farmer, the smallholder farmer, can compare which bank provides the cheapest loan product. The recommendation was included in the policy paper, in the strategy. The other issue is now over-indebtedness of the smallholder farmers. It's even not the issue of interest, but the issue how much burden of liabilities do they have in general. The principal part that is much bigger than the interest part. We need to understand how these loans can be revised, renegotiated to make them able to continue their activities. So another main point that government wants to focus, particularly agricultural Ministry of Agriculture, is the provision of the subsidized loans to the producers. So the farmer will not take himself a loan, but will be sure that the producer will purchase his harvest and pay immediately.
Jointly through the Agriculture Alliance and the Ministry of Agriculture developed the draft strategy of agricultural development, which also contains a huge part on the food security. And currently, once we have developed, we have agreed with the Ministry of Agriculture that the Agriculture Alliance would be the main focal person, representing mostly the civil society organizations, in public monitoring of implementation of the strategy to make sure that the policies that we have in place are not just something written on the paper, but also are implemented and they have a positive impact that we are expecting from the government. So as a result of series of discussions, we came up with a decision to select 4 main priorities for, let's say, areas, agriculture and food security areas, for further monitoring.
Related to policy monitoring, Agriculture Alliance, with the support of Oxfam in Armenia, did research in the field of food safety, food security, and in the field of about the agricultural extensions, how they are working in Armenia. So after that research, that we have all the data, we decided to use it and approach to the government to also to monitor their policy in the field of cooperative development and in the field how is agricultural insurance is going to be. And also we are using that data to find some money for that monitoring purposes. So we joined Agriculture Alliance like a year ago. And during working with producer groups, we found that issues like, for example, the issues related to agricultural insurance, it's now very crucial for our beneficiaries. And also the food safety issues, which is also very crucial for our country.
This became the basis for the Alliance to develop a monitoring framework on these 4 areas. Which then we also reflected in the MOU, a new MOU that was submitted to the Ministry of Agriculture to renew and reconfirm our cooperation. And once this MOU is signed between the Agriculture Alliance and the Ministry of Agriculture, the Alliance would be well positioned in pushing forward and with the jointly initiating monitoring with the Ministry on these 4 priority areas and come up with the further recommendations.
We were very honored to become a member of the GARD a few years ago when we joined the Alliance with the purpose of bringing the issues of internally displaced people in agenda of the GARD. which, as we know, serves the purpose of promoting the issues related to rural development and agriculture in Georgia. During the couple of last years, I actually had a chance to witness the number of great advocacy initiatives undertaken within Guards and by Guard members. Namely, I have to notice, first of all, contribution made by Guard into the process of developing state agricultural development strategy and its action plan. Guard was successful in providing the comprehensive package of the recommendations. Part of it was considered by the respective ministry. Recent one was the effort aiming to contribute to improve the policy and legislative framework when it comes to food security and nutrition. Particularly, there was a draft law, bylaw, prepared within Guard called bylaw on food security, which was shared with the relevant state institution for further submission to the Parliament of Georgia. Try to promote and try to support the process of constructive cooperation with the relevant state ministries, whether through bilateral meeting or multilateral meeting, or organizing the public events through a number of conferences, workshops, where representatives from the relevant state institutions, the ministries or their subordinated agencies would be invited to be a part of open discussions around the issue. Another means used in this process was preparing, as already mentioned previously, declarations, the public statements, appeal letters with the governmental counterparts. That would be the usual inventory of the means which Guard members would apply. Most obvious way is that there are a number of working groups operating inside the Guard, which are in charge for monitoring and pursuing its activities with regards to the different priority areas. For instance, our organization is a member of the working group on access to land. There are other groups which are in charge for accessing to the financial resources, nutrition, and number of other issues. So through its thematic working groups, which have divided among themselves the priorities which Guard as Alliance is going to pursue, I think that will be the way to proceed to proceed the objectives which remain to be unchanged from the day of establishment of the Guard. It would require from Guard's leadership and Guard members like a conscious efforts to continue working with the governmental institutions, with individuals who are in a position to make decisions and influence the process of adoption of the new policy framework with regards to the food security.
When we talk about the linkages between food security and gender, and the question why we should integrate gender into food security policy or program implementation, the answer is very simple. So the majority of food producers are women in Georgia, and not only in Georgia, we have the similar situation globally, and more consumers of food are also women. So that's why there is a strong connection, strong importance of integrating gender into food security policy and program implementation in terms of improving, first of all, production, and then increasing awareness on food security issues for consumers. When we talk about consumers, the first that comes into under our attention is the lack of information and lack of knowledge. That we can count as a number one challenge, and we need to provide more information to population, to government, to policymakers, to businesses about the importance of integrating gender interests, gender aspects into the food security sectors they are responsible for. So the second challenge that comes logically from the first challenge, is the lack of gender aspects in public policy regarding food security. We face the same problems in other sectors as well, but since we highlight that we have more producers and more consumers regarding the food, women as consumers and producers, it makes it more important to pay attention on this. And the third one is again the process. The situation on grassroots level. So the small scale and middle scale producers. They have very limited access to finances, very limited access to assets, very limited access to information on new technologies to be used in food production. Responding to those challenges, the food security project implemented by Oxfam in Georgia, we tried to address in our work, in our advocacy work, majority of them. For example, as for awareness raising, several campaigns were provided for women in agriculture, for women in government, on importance of their involvement in food security policy development, implementation, provided the genderized recommendations for the Ministry of Agriculture on food security issues. So one of the key recommendations was provide more information, one thing, and which is not less important is start thinking about motivating women to register, to be registered as landowners, because it gives them the opportunity to get more access to finances, to credits, and to invest in their small and medium scale enterprises, food production enterprises. Promotion of the best practices. That's also important, because we really have good examples of women entrepreneurs who work in agriculture, in food production, and the number is very limited, but people should know about them. These recommendations were discussed with the Ministry of Agriculture of Georgia, and there were some questions. They needed more specific actions regarding implementing those recommendations. We have done that. We provided the mapping of the process, how this recommendation should be done, and I would add that we also provided the information, the plan, how the donor community can support the government to implement those recommendations. So now there is the full picture, full mapping document provided to the government, and the next step is implementation of this document. It consists of basically of the advocacy activities. It consists of developing, integrating gender aspects into institutional setup of the ministry, and starting collection, for example, gender information, like how many women are in the food production, how many cases we have that women advocated for their rights, and on availability of resources, including financial resources. And this document faces all those challenges. Government was very positive, ministry was very positive on those recommendations, so we expect successful and step-by-step implementation of those ones.
First of all, it was lack of knowledge and information about food security in itself. And secondly, it was lack of understanding how gender could be mainstreamed in this, let's say, completely other area of work. All of the problems, like let's say lack of opportunities in education field, lack of opportunities in health conditions and services, lack of opportunities in equal pay, everything is very much connected to food security and well-being of people. And we started to work with the Ministry of Agriculture, which was, let's say, one of the most non-sensitive ministries in Armenia, because they never talked about women participation, they never heard about gender equality issues, and they never tried to understand how it should be mainstreamed, or should it be mainstreamed or not at all. First of all, we started with the gender mainstreaming of socio-economic development program of one of the regions of Armenia. First of all, we understood that this program is completely gender blind. No understanding of women population of that region, no understanding of problems of women living in that area. So we started with that. We started to work with the National Statistical Service. We started to work with the regional authorities just to gain this information, just to understand what is the situation, and to show them that this information should be used to make their life easier. First of all, we achieved the following. Our suggestions, our proposals to mainstream gender into the program were accepted by the local authorities, and all our suggestions were put into the program. And after that, we started trainings with the persons that were responsible for the implementation of that program. So it was one very successful example of our work. And we decided to extend this knowledge and this experience to other areas as well. And after the consultations with the Ministry of Labor and Social Issues, which is focal point for gender equality issues, we decided to prepare to develop a manual on mainstreaming gender into the socio-economic development programs. And this manual was adopted by the government as let's say guiding material to be used while working on the socio-economic development programs. And it was again the initiative of the Ministry of Labor and Social Issues and Ministry of Agriculture. We developed a manual on how to implement gender analysis in the regions. And this material was very widely disseminated because it was sent to all the regions, and the training for local staff working on the working in the regions were trained on how to use that manual and how to work in that area. We started thinking about the mainstreaming gender into the strategy, agricultural strategy, because it was our main goal within the framework of food security program. Then we found out a lot of information that is just missing in terms of sex disaggregation data, in terms of understanding why it is so, etc., etc. All our findings were discussed during the meeting with the ministry and the group responsible for the strategy preparation, and were very widely disseminated among Agricultural Alliance members. And then we all together started to think how to present, how it would be more useful, the most useful way to present our findings and to put all these suggestions into the strategy. And again, it was not easy, but finally we understood that in case all our data or all our suggestions are evidence-based, and in case we can provide, let's say, sufficient understanding and statistics, it could be accepted, and it was accepted.